In 1912, in a hotel dining room in Munich, the most famous psychologist alive collapsed to the floor unconscious. The man who lunged forward and caught him was his closest friend, his chosen heir, the son he never had. And the one person on earth he had come to fear. Sigmund Freud fainted because Carl Jung was talking, not shouting, not threatening, talking about a dead Egyptian king of all things. But Freud had heard something underneath the words. The brilliant younger man he had built his entire legacy around had stopped agreeing with him, and he was never going to start again. Within a year, two men who had once talked for 13 hours without stopping would never speak again. Not one more letter, not one more word. The official story is that they fought about sex. Every textbook says it. It's wrong. What actually broke Freud and Jung was an idea neither of them had a name for, an idea a Chinese hermit had written down 25 centuries earlier, in a country neither man had ever seen. It's the same idea that explains why the people who complete us are so often the exact people we cannot forgive. By the time we're done, you're going to recognize it, because it's probably already happened to you. I'm Andrew, and this is Daily Tao Wisdom, where we go back to the source. Not the quotes on Instagram, not the self-help repackaging, the actual stories, the actual figures, the actual wisdom, and what it means for your life right now. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this friendship had to break. Not as gossip, but as a law. And you'll never look at the people who used to be close to you the same way again. Let's go back to where it started. Vienna, 1906. The city is the intellectual capital of Europe and the loneliest place in the world for one particular doctor. Sigmund Freud is 50 years old. He has spent 15 years building something nobody asked for and almost nobody believes: a map of the hidden mind. He claims that under everything you think you choose, there is a second self running the show. Dreams aren't noise, they're encrypted messages. The slip of the tongue isn't an accident. The child you were never stopped being. It is, depending on who you ask, the most important discovery in the history of human self-understanding, or the ravings of a man obsessed with sex. In 1906, most of Vienna's medical establishment votes for the second one. Freud is brilliant, isolated, and increasingly bitter about it. He is surrounded by a small circle of loyal disciples, most of them, like him, Jewish, most of them in Vienna, and he has begun to suspect something that frightens him, that the entire movement could die with him, dismissed as a strange local cult. He needs something he cannot manufacture from inside his own circle. He needs an outsider, a believer who isn't already one of his own, someone young, someone gifted, someone with a name that would let psychoanalysis travel beyond Vienna and beyond the suspicion that it was, in the language of the time, merely a Jewish affair. And then a package arrives from Switzerland. It's from a 31-year-old psychiatrist at the Burghölzli, the famous mental hospital in Zurich. His name is Carl Gustav Jung, and he is everything Freud is not. He is Swiss, he is Protestant, he is tall, charismatic, and already rising fast inside respectable academic medicine. He has been running word association experiments on patients, measuring hesitations, stumbles, the tiny delays that reveal where a person is hiding something. And his results, he tells Freud, keep proving Freud right. For Freud, this is almost too good to be true. Here is the crown prince he's been praying for, young enough to lead the next generation, credentialed enough to be taken seriously, Gentile enough to carry the movement past the prejudice strangling it in Vienna. Here's what everyone around Freud believed in that moment: that he had just found his greatest ally. Freud was about to discover, slowly and then all at once, that he had found his greatest opposite. The two men begin to write. The letters are electric, and in late February of 1907, Jung travels to Vienna to meet the older man in person at Freud's apartment at Berggasse 19. They sit down to talk. They do not stop for 13 hours. Chapter 1: The 13-hour conversation. Try to picture it honestly. Two men, strangers that morning, who discover within minutes that they are the only two people each has ever met who see the thing they see. Jung later said he had never encountered an intelligence like Freud's. Freud, for his part, treated Jung almost immediately not as a colleague, but as a son, the gifted son, the one who would inherit everything. And this is where the trap is already set, in the very first hours, when everything feels perfect. Because they were not the same. They only looked the same from a distance, the way two travelers on a dark road look identical until the sun comes up. Freud's mind moved like a scalpel. It wanted to cut a thing down to its single, hidden cause. For Freud, the cause was almost always the same root: buried desire, mostly sexual, mostly from childhood. One lock, one key. Find the repressed wish, and you've solved the human being. Jung's mind moved the opposite way. Where Freud wanted to narrow, Jung wanted to widen. He was haunted by myth, by religion, by the strange symbols that show up in the dreams of people who've never read the books those symbols come from. Jung didn't want the single key. He suspected the lock opened onto something enormous, a deeper layer of the mind shared by the whole species. Where Freud saw a sealed basement, Jung saw an ocean. Here's the thing most people miss about this friendship. Those two minds didn't clash at first. They fit. Freud's narrowing and Jung's widening completed each other. The scalpel and the ocean. Each man could do something the other couldn't, and for a few years that difference made them stronger than either could have been alone. You felt this. The friend, the partner, the collaborator who is your opposite in exactly the right way, who has the strength you're missing. For a while, it feels like destiny. It usually is. The question is what you do when the difference stops being charming and starts being a threat. Hold on to that question. Because in 1909, on a ship crossing the Atlantic, Freud is going to answer it, and the answer is going to start everything coming apart. Chapter 2: The Crown Prince. Before the ship, you have to understand the weight Freud put on Jung's shoulders. Freud didn't just like Jung, he needed him, and he said so, openly, in language that should have set off alarms. In his letters, he called Jung his successor, his crown prince, his heir. He installed him as the first president of the international psychoanalytic movement. He told colleagues, in effect, that when he was gone, this young Swiss would carry the whole thing forward. It sounds like generosity. It was something heavier than that. Freud had built a system, and like every person who builds a system out of the loneliness of being doubted, he had begun to confuse the system with the truth. The theory of sexuality wasn't just one idea among Freud's ideas. It had become the wall holding back the flood, and he asked his followers to defend that wall like a fortress. There's a moment, recorded by Jung, where Freud urges him to make the sexual theory into an unshakable bulwark. A dogma, Jung said, against a black tide of the irrational. Sit with that word, dogma. Freud, the great destroyer of illusions, the man who taught the world to distrust its own certainties, was asking his heir to swear an oath to a fixed idea and never let it move. And now we touch the thing the whole video is built on, so I want to say it slowly. 25 centuries before Freud, in China, an old man is said to have written down the first line of a book that would outlive empires. The line is this: "The Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao." Don't gloss over it. He's not being mystical for the sake of it. He's making a brutal, practical claim about reality. The moment you successfully pin the deepest truth down with a name, with a fixed definition, with a wall, you've already lost it. You're holding the cage. The bird is gone. That is exactly what Freud could not survive. His genius was naming. He gave names to the unnamed, the unconscious, the ego, repression, the whole hidden architecture of the self. It was a staggering achievement, but somewhere along the way, the naming curdled into clinging. He stopped describing the mind and started defending a description of it. He needed the map to be the territory, forever, with no revisions. Jung was about to revise it. And here's the modern mirror before we go any further, because you don't live in 1909. Think about the last time you watched someone smart turn one true idea into the only idea. The diet that became a religion. The political frame that explained literally everything. The single childhood wound that became the answer to their entire life. There's a moment where an insight stops being a tool you hold and becomes a wall you hide behind. Freud reached that moment with the thing he loved most. Most of us reach it eventually. The only question is whether we notice. But wait, there's a problem with this picture. Because Jung wasn't innocent here either. And the place that becomes obvious is the deck of a ship. Chapter 3, The Dream He Wouldn't Share. September 1909. Freud and Jung are invited to America together, to Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts, to receive honorary degrees and lecture on this strange new science of the mind. It is the high water mark of their friendship. Two men at the peak of their powers, crossing an ocean to plant their flag in a new continent. And to pass the long days at sea, they do the most intimate thing two psychoanalysts can do. They analyze each other's dreams. For days it works. They trade their nightly images and dig into them together, and you can imagine the closeness of it. Two people taking turns handing each other the keys to their own basements. Until one morning Freud describes a dream, and Jung, doing exactly what they'd been doing all week, asks for the personal associations behind it. The details from Freud's actual life that would unlock what the dream meant. And Freud stops. He looks at the younger man, and according to Jung's later memory, he says, "I cannot risk my authority." Read that again. The man who built his life on the principle that nothing should stay hidden. That the hidden thing is precisely the thing that runs you, refuses to be seen. He chooses his authority over the truth. In that instant, Jung said, he lost it. Not the friendship, not yet, but the awe. Because Freud had just demonstrated, in one sentence, that he valued being the master more than he valued the work. Here's what makes this the turning point, and not just a sad anecdote. Freud's whole gift was unforcing, letting the buried thing rise on its own, never shoving. And the moment his own depths were the thing on the table, He forced. He clamped down. He gripped. There's a word for what Freud failed to do on that ship, and it isn't a Western word. The Taoists called the highest form of action Wu Wei, usually translated as non-action, but that translation is a trap. It doesn't mean doing nothing. It means acting without forcing. It means not strangling the thing you claim to be cultivating. The master gardener doesn't pull the plant up to make it grow faster. Freud, on that ship, pulled the plant up. He needed to control what was rising in himself, and the need to control it was the first visible crack in everything. Now, be honest with yourself for a second, because this one's close to home. When was the last time you demanded honesty from everyone around you, and then went silent the moment the honesty turned toward you? The boss who wants radical candor until it's about the boss. The parent who interrogates and never answers. We are all, in our worst moments, capable of saying, "I cannot risk my authority." We just don't say it out loud. Freud, at least, was honest about being dishonest. The friendship survived the ship. Barely. But the next crack didn't come from words at all. It came from Freud's own body. Twice. Chapter 4. The Body Knows First. There's a detail in this story that no purely intellectual account can explain, and it's the detail I find most haunting. Freud fainted in Jung's presence, not once, twice. The first time was in 1909 in a hotel in Bremen, just before they sailed for America. They'd been arguing, strangely, about corpses, ancient bodies preserved in the peat bogs of northern Europe. Jung kept circling the subject, fascinated by these perfectly preserved dead. And Freud, growing more agitated by the minute, suddenly slid out of his chair in a dead faint. When he came to, he is reported to have accused Jung of something astonishing, of harboring death wishes against him. The second time was 1912 in Munich, the scene we opened with. This time the conversation was about Akhenaten, the Egyptian pharaoh who tried to erase his own father's name from every monument in the kingdom. Jung was discussing it as history, but Freud heard a son talking about destroying a father, and again, mid-conversation, he collapsed. Now you can explain this medically. Freud had his own theories about why he fainted, and they were complicated. But step back and look at the shape of it. Twice, the father of the theory that the mind betrays itself through the body, betrayed himself through his body. The most controlled mind in Europe lost control of his own consciousness. And both times it happened when the subject, underneath the words, was a son outgrowing a father. His mind would not say, "I am losing him, and it feels like dying." So his body said it for him. It dropped him on the floor. This is the Taoist intuition made flesh, and it's older and stranger than Freud's own psychology. The Taoists never believed the mind sat above the body, issuing orders. They saw a single field of energy, and they taught that when you violently suppress one pole of yourself, it doesn't disappear. It goes underground and comes back as its opposite, with interest. Push too hard in one direction, and the system snaps back the other way, not as a punishment, but as a law. The same law that turns the longest day of summer into the first day of the year's darkening. The peak is the turning point. Freud was at the peak of his life, famous, crowned, surrounded by disciples. And at the peak, the turn had already begun. His body felt it before his mind would admit it. I want you to notice something about your own life here. and I'll come back to it later, so file it away. The thing you're most afraid of losing, the thing you grip hardest, watch where the tension shows up in your body. The jaw, the chest, the 3 a.m. wide awake. The body keeps the score, the mind refuses to settle. We're at the 10-minute heart of this now, and I need to flag something. Everything I've told you so far is the setup. Because in 1912, Jung published a book, and what happened next reframes this entire friendship. Turns it from a sad falling out into something close to a tragedy in the old Greek sense, where the catastrophe was written into the characters from the first page. Chapter 5. The book that ended it. The book was called, in German, Wandlungen und Symbole der Libido, Transformations and Symbols of the Libido. On the surface, it's dense and difficult, but buried in it is one move, and that one move was a knife aimed straight at the wall Freud had spent his life building. Freud's whole system rested on libido, meaning essentially sexual energy. That was the engine. That was the single-named cause under everything. Jung, in this book, quietly redefined libido as something far larger, psychic energy in general, the life force itself, of which sexuality was only one expression. Do you see what he did? He took Freud's single key and said, "It's not a key. It's one key on a ring. The lock is bigger than you thought." To you and me, 2 centuries downstream, that might sound like a technical disagreement among specialists. To Freud, it was apostasy. Jung hadn't extended the theory. He'd unfixed it. He'd told the architect that the load-bearing wall was just one wall in a much larger building, and that the building had rooms Freud had never entered. Myth, religion, the collective layer of the mind. The very flood Freud had built the wall to hold back. The letters between them over the next year are some of the most painful documents in the history of ideas. They start as theory and curdle into something personal and raw. At one point, Jung, and remember, this is the younger man writing to his mentor, his adopted father, accuses Freud of treating the people around him as patients rather than equals, of keeping his disciples as sons who must stay forever wrong so the father can stay forever right. It is a devastating thing to say, and the devastating thing about it is that it was largely true. Freud's reply in early 1913 was to propose that they simply end their personal relationship altogether, abandon it, as if cauterizing a wound. The last letters went back and forth and then stopped. In 1913, Jung gave up his role at the heart of the movement. The following year, he resigned the presidency entirely. The 13-hour conversation had become permanent silence. They lived another 2 and 3 decades, respectively. They never reconciled. And here's the cruelest part. The part that makes it a tragedy and not just a fight. Neither man was wrong. Freud was right that you need a fixed point, that a science with no firm ground is just poetry, that if every idea is always up for revision, you can never build anything that lasts. And Jung was right that any fixed point you refuse to ever revise becomes a prison, that the moment your model can no longer be corrected by reality, you've stopped doing science and started defending a faith. They were each holding one half of a truth that only works whole. And because each man needed his half to be the only half, the truth tore down the middle, and it tore the friendship with it. Which brings us, finally, to the thing the textbooks never say. The reason this didn't have to end this way. And it comes from a book written 2,500 years before either of them was born. Chapter 6. What neither of them could see. If you've seen our video on the night Carl Jung read the Tao Te Ching, you already know that Jung, late in his life, found in Taoist philosophy a language for things he'd spent decades reaching toward without words. What's almost unbearable is that the language was right there during the break with Freud, and neither man had it yet. So let me hand it to them, 50 years too late. At the very center of Taoist thought sits a symbol you'd recognize instantly. The circle, dark and light, each half curved around the other, each half carrying a seed of its opposite. Yin and yang, and almost everyone misreads it. People think it's about balance, a nice even split, two forces politely sharing a circle. That's not it. The real teaching is far stranger and far more useful. The opposites don't just coexist, they generate each other. There is no light that isn't defined by dark, no high without low, no full without empty. The Tao Te Ching says it plainly. Being and non-being give birth to each other. The difficult and the easy complete each other. Before and after follow each other. The opposition is not a flaw in the system to be resolved. The opposition is the system. It's the engine. Kill one pole and you don't get peace. You get a dead thing. Now look back at Freud and Jung with that in your hand. The scalpel and the ocean. The man who narrows and the man who widens. The one who needs a fixed point and the one who needs an open horizon. They were a yin-yang. They were, quite literally, the two poles of every question worth asking about the human mind. And the friendship was electric precisely because they were opposite. That tension wasn't the problem. That tension was the most valuable thing either of them ever had. And Freud tried to collapse it. That's the whole tragedy in one sentence. Freud couldn't tolerate the opposition, so he tried to turn his opposite into a copy. He wanted Jung to be a son, which is to say, a smaller, loyal version of himself, carrying his ideas forward unchanged. He didn't want a compliment. He wanted an echo. And the moment Jung refused to be an echo, the moment the dark half of the circle insisted on staying dark, Freud experienced it as betrayal, when it was actually the only thing keeping the circle alive. You cannot turn yang into more yin without destroying both. The instant the opposite becomes a copy, the energy dies. The circle goes flat. Freud got what some part of him wanted, a movement full of loyal sons who would never contradict him. And it cost him the one mind that could have kept his own honest. Jung wasn't blameless, and I won't pretend he was. He had his own need to be free of the father, his own ambition, his own hunger to widen until he'd swallowed Freud's whole system inside his bigger one. But Jung, at least, walked away from the break and spent the next years doing something extraordinary. He went down into his own depths, the very flood Freud feared, and he came back with the work that would define him. The break nearly destroyed him. It also made him. Because that's the other thing yin-yang knows that Freud couldn't bear. The turning point that looks like a catastrophe, the friendship dying, the heir lost, the years of darkness, is also, always, a beginning. The water reaches its lowest point and starts to rise. Jung's worst year was the seed of his best work. The faint on the dining room floor was not just an ending. It was the system snapping back toward its missing half. Sound familiar? It should. Because you've been the father and you've been the son. You've needed someone to stay the same so you could feel safe. And you've been the one who had to change and watch a relationship break because of it. Both halves of this story are inside you. That's why it lands. That's why it isn't gossip. Let me show you exactly how. I know what you're thinking. This is a beautiful story about two dead geniuses. But you have a friendship that's gone cold for reasons you can't name, or a parent you can't talk to, or a mentor you've outgrown and feel guilty about it. And that's a Tuesday, not a philosophy lecture. So let's make this useful today. Here is the trap, named plainly, and then 3 things you can actually do about it. The trap has a modern face, and it's everywhere right now. We are taught to surround ourselves with people who affirm us. Build your circle, find your tribe, cut out anyone who drains you. And there's wisdom in some of that. But taken to the end, Freud took it. It becomes a quiet catastrophe, a life full of echoes. People who agree with you, reflect you back, confirm what you already believe. It feels like support. It's actually starvation. You've removed every pole that could complete you and kept only the ones that copy you, the flat circle, the dead thing that feels safe. First, this week, identify the one relationship in your life where you secretly need the other person to not change. Be honest, there's at least one. The friend you'd feel betrayed by if they suddenly disagreed with you about something that matters. That feeling of preemptive betrayal is the tell. That's you doing what Freud did, gripping. You don't have to fix it, just see it. Naming the grip is the first loosening of it. Second, do a yin-yang audit of your closest people. Sort them, roughly, into 2 piles, the ones who are your echo, who think like you, like what you like, confirm what you believe, and the ones who are your complement, who are genuinely opposite to you in some real way that occasionally drives you crazy. Most people, when they do this honestly, find their echo pile is enormous and their complement pile has 2 names on it, and they've been slowly drifting away from both. Drift back. The people who irritate you in the right way are not the threat. They're the engine. Third, and this is the hard one, the next time someone close to you changes, outgrows a belief you share, takes a path you wouldn't, becomes someone you don't fully recognize, catch the exact moment you start to read it as betrayal. Catch it and ask one question. Is this person actually harming me, or are they just refusing to stay my echo? Freud couldn't tell the difference. Most of the relationships that die between good people die right there in that confusion. Not over a real injury, but over the refusal of one person to remain a smaller copy of the other. I'm not going to pretend any of this is simple. It isn't. The pull toward the echo is one of the deepest pulls there is, because the echo makes us feel real, and the complement makes us feel threatened, and our nervous system can't always tell threatened from endangered. Freud was one of the most self-aware human beings who ever lived, and it took him down anyway. So, go easy on yourself, but go. Come back with me to that dining room in Munich. Freud on the floor. Jung kneeling over the man who was once his whole future, lifting him. When we started, that looked like a medical event. A famous man fainted. Now you see what it actually was. It was a circle trying to hold 2 halves that one of the halves could no longer bear. It was the most controlled mind in Europe being told, by his own collapsing body, the thing he could not let himself know, that he was losing his opposite, and that losing his opposite felt like dying, because in a sense, it was. 2 men who could have spent their lives completing each other, spent them, instead, in silence, each defending his half of a truth that only ever worked whole. So here's the question I'll leave you with, and I mean it as a real one, not a clever one. The people you've cut off, or drifted from, or quietly written off as wrong, how many of them were actually a danger to you, and how many were just the dark half of your own circle, refusing to turn into light? I don't know the answer for your life. You might not either. But this week, I'd try one thing. Pick one person you've let go cold because they stopped agreeing with you, and reach toward them once. Not to win, just to let the opposite back into the circle and see if the thing starts moving again. Next time, we're staying inside this collision because Jung didn't stop with Freud. When he went down into that flood alone, what he found waiting there has its own ancient name and its own ancient map, and we're going to read it together. Before you go, one question, and give me a real answer, not a polite one. Who in your life is your complement, not your echo? The person whose oppositeness makes you better, even when it makes you crazy. Name them in the comments. And if you've ever broken with someone the way Freud broke with Jung over their refusal to stay the same, tell me what you'd say to them now. I read these. I'm Andrew. This has been Daily Tao Wisdom. The rest is yours.